y'all ready to head off the trails? I'm the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, and I'm ready to take you on a mysterious journey right now. We welcome you to Off the Trails right here on the Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel. If you guys haven't hit subscribe yet, please do, because we would love to have you guys. Shout out to Bumblefoot for that awesome intro music. It sets the tone. All right, you guys, please follow us on social media. On Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. You guys can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com. That's where all of my shows are posted, all of my events that I'm going to be at. Man, I had a kick-ass time at the Molina Bigfoot Festival last weekend. My guest tonight, Trey Hudson, was also a speaker at that event. And we had such a great time there. So shout out to everybody in Molina, Georgia. Y'all know how to throw a party. And we really did have a good time. But yes, you guys can go find me over on my website. All my social media links are there. And also I have my YouTube channel. That's the Cryptid Huntress. Y'all please go over there and subscribe. I would love to have y'all. My subscribers are going up every day, and I am so happy to have all my new subscribers over there. Shout out to all y'all. Thank you so much. I do have live shows over there every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern and every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so y'all come see me. Also, I have a shop that's called War Woman Goods, and if you guys would like to support what I do, you can do your Christmas shopping over there on Etsy and on my website in the shop. And also, I have a Patreon. That's the Cryptid Huntress. Y'all go check it out. We also have the Space Travelers Club here at Spaced Out Radio, where you guys can become a member. That's our Patreon here at Spaced Out Radio. We would love to have you guys join us there as well, and you'll get some perks. Trust me, it's a rocking good time over there at the Space Travelers Club. Okay, we have a fantastic guest here at Spaced Out Radio tonight. I have my friend, more like family, and fellow researcher, my teammate, the head of my team, Trey Hudson, is here in the studio tonight. Don't forget that right after this show, After Hours is going to be airing a very special episode. I believe it's the one with Lou Elizondo on there tonight. And so, yeah, they're going to be back live next week, but we do have a really great show lined up for you guys to watch after mine's over tonight. Okay, let's get to our guest, because we have a fantastic show tonight. Trey Hudson is the current director of the Anomalous Studies and Observation Group, or ASOG. ASOG focuses on investigating incidents and places of extreme high strangeness from a multidisciplinary point of view. ASOG strives to balance the experiential nature of an occurrence with the data-driven collection of empirical information. They feel the experiencer is just as important as the experience and approach research from this perspective. Trey retired from the Department of Defense in May of 2023 as Supervisory Security Specialist in an intelligence community design position. In 2008 to 2009, he served a tour in Afghanistan as an operations and anti-terrorism officer. He's also an EMS first responder, combat lifesaver, rescue scuba diver, certified military emergency management specialist, certified DoD security professional, and extra class amateur radio operator. Y'all, I cut the bio a little short because he is so qualified. He's got a long bio. But more importantly than anything, Trey is my good friend and the head of my team, Anomalous Studies and Observation Group. Please help me welcome to Spaced Out Radio, my friend, Trey Hudson. Hey, Trey.
Howdy. How are you this evening?
I am so good. Oh my gosh. I knew that anytime you come on the show, we have a really good conversation. And so I'm doing great. And I'm pretty rested up from that Bigfoot festival last weekend. How are you?
Oh, just, rocking and rolling in Molina, Georgia.
Molina.
Molina.
Yes.
Molina. There you go. You can really do it. Go Molina,
Molina. That's right.
Like they do back in the holler. But yeah, I'm rested up. Just been really busy. Thank you for that introduction. You make me sound a whole lot more interesting than I am. What I tell people is I am an ordinary guy that's just had some extraordinary experiences in my life. So just living the dream.
Oh, Trey, you don't give yourself enough credit. You're the man. Okay, come on. Like we have a really good time too
Yeah,
out there in the field. And I met you a long time ago
it was a
at a
long time ago.
Bigfoot, I think it was a Bigfoot conference in North Georgia where
Yes.
Ron Moorhead was speaking and
Mhm.
R. Scott Nelson and the head of our other team, Enigma Research Group, he was speaking. And we had a really good time and we've been friends ever since.
Mhm.
Since that was about 12 years ago, I think.
Yeah, 12
So
years ago, and we were
yeah,
actually also classmates in a remote viewing class.
a very long and arduous remote viewing
Yeah,
class. Yes, that lasted for years on and off. Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's super special that our team is able to do out in the field when we're doing our Bigfoot field research. And we're not even really a Bigfoot field research team. We're more of a everything research team, right?
yeah, that's what I tell people. And you and I discussed this way back at the Dahlonega Bigfoot conference. 2013 or whenever that 2012 or whatever. Is I started off as a paranormal researcher, as a ghost guy, and had a lot of success at that. But now, people say, "So, are you a ufologist?" I'm like, well, I am a MUFON field investigator. Oh, are you a cryptid researcher? Well, I've researched cryptids and have had experiences, but really, I'm a weird crapologist. If it's weird and high strangeness, I'm there, and I just go wherever the experience leads me. Like you talked about in the introduction, the experience drives the experiencer. That is what it's really about. It's the human experience, and we try really hard not to lose that.
That's right. You know what I always find really funny is that I branched off into the more of the cryptid community, and you do more of the UFO community kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
And but we're on the same team, which is so fun. It's really interesting.
yeah.
It
It's
shows
really
you we're not in a box.
no,
Yeah.
we're not. It's really crazy. I'm not going to name who it was, but it was the head of a very well known, scientifically driven UAP research organization. Called me to ask my opinion about something, and I'm like, I'm not even a UFO guy, but I have all these, UFO people that, contact me and, we discuss various things. So yeah, I guess I get it honestly. Whenever I was a little tiny, tot running around in the 70s, I used to watch In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, which covered all of this. So I guess it all stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Well, okay, so we do research some really cool places
Oh yeah.
all over the South, and I know you've been all over the country and all over the
Mhm.
world. Actually, you've been traveling all over the world lately.
Mhm.
And but as far as our research goes, we do a lot of boots on the ground field research, where we go out and do something that's super interesting. People watch that show about Skinwalker Ranch. There's been books written about it. A lot of really fantastic paranormal activity goes on at places like Skinwalker Ranch. But we're able, and I mean, I get goosebumps talking about it and thinking about it. We have the privilege to go out there and be able to research places just like Skinwalker Ranch ourselves.
Yeah, and that's something that's really important for folks to realize. And it's kind of a story how we came across this place. Is you watch Secret Skinwalker Ranch, or you watch Blind Frog Ranch, or a lot of the other shows, and you think there's just a handful of these places in the world, but there really aren't. There's really a lot of them out there, and that's how we discovered this place is by following the folklore. If you start really looking at the folklore and digging into the history, then overlaying empirical reports like from MUFON, National UFO Reporting Organization, BFR, Bigfoot Research Organization, and start looking at these happenings, you'll start to see clusters, and that's really where you start to focus and start looking at these things. And what you might find, and this is really neat, is you might find one of these places in your own backyard, and it might be 5 miles from where you're sitting right now, your very own Skinwalker Ranch, within driving distance. And so that's what I tell people is, yeah, boots on the ground research, absolutely, but spend time in the library, spend time, on the internet researching, because that just tells your boots where to go, so you're not walking around in a circle.
Yeah. You don't want your boots on the ground in a circle. Well, sometimes when we're tracking, that's how you track,
Yeah,
right? You have to
yeah, that's
walk in a
true.
circle.
A
So
story
we
of my
do kind
life.
of walk in circles. Yeah, mine too. Me too. Yeah. Well, just about everybody that we know, everybody has heard a story about a local legend, a local witch, a local pig man, a wolf man, a dog man, werewolf sightings. A witch or a ghost is pretty common, especially down here in the South.
Mhm.
And so we like to go with our team. We actually kind of like to go wherever there's a ghost road or some kind of report of something odd, or even like UFOs. The one of the last places that I went out and researched, and we missed you the other weekend, Trey, but
Yeah,
we were down in the troop herd corridor where there's a lot of UFO activity down there and alien abductions, right?
hmm yeah. That area is super active. A lot of history in the True Bird corridor, and the area which I've been there many times. I just unfortunately was out of the country when y'all went. Is super active. I mean, and it's like right in the middle of the True Bird corridor, and y'all had some amazing experiences there a few weekends ago, which I'm really jealous because I'm like, doggone it. Yeah, I mean, I was sipping pina coladas on a beach, with my feet in the sand, which was pretty cool. But y'all were capturing one of the most compelling. And I'm going to go off on a rabbit trail, if that's okay. One of the coolest documentation that y'all got from that weekend was from Kristen, and what it was, and I'll tell your listeners out there, is it was a hominid shape. It was taken through a thermal camera, and it was a high-end camera. It was an ATN OTS4, which is a high-end thermal unit. And what it is, it shows a humanoid figure, head, arms, shoulders, all that, pop out from behind a tree, move around, move back, and then disappear. And our researcher, Kristen, she thought something was over there, looked through her thermal, didn't see it really obvious on the thermal, but we picked it up on review. But what's really interesting, and this is where we can kind of get into some Ron Moorhead stuff. You mentioned him earlier. Is the thermal signature of this image, this figure, was just a few degrees warmer than the ambient temperature of the environment. And why is that important? If you go back and you can look this up online, they're now tracking orangutan colonies in various parts of the world by using thermals on drones. So you look at that and you'll see that the orangutans, their faces are very, very, very bright, very hot. Their hands are very hot because that's where they have no fur. This thing wasn't like that. It was just a few degrees warmer than the ambient temperature. So what does that mean? It means that this thing wasn't hot blooded like we think of it. And it makes you wonder, like Ron Moorhead talks about in the Quantum Bigfoot, are these things just winking in and out of existence? Are they just very momentarily becoming visible, just a few degrees warmer or colder than the surroundings, and then they blink out of existence? And that goes back to something we encountered in the meadow. Our good friend Bob captured some thermal of a large hulking figure with a stumpy head and broad shoulders and long arms, colder than the surroundings, not warmer. And this was in the wintertime. So these things, seem to be just a little bit warmer or colder than the environment, which is interesting because if you go back to ghost lore, what's one of the first things that people talk about when they experience a ghost? The temperature drops. It gets colder. So
Yes.
are these things, to include Bigfoot and cryptids, are they draining energy from the ambient surroundings as they move in and out of our existence? So anyway, long story short, y'all caught some really cool stuff last weekend, and I missed it. And dang it, So I'm still mad at
We
you.
did.
So
We did. And my son, I took Ben out there. He saw his first Bigfoot. We
oh,
were out
cool.
there with Don and David. Yeah,
Okay.
and there was so much Bigfoot activity, Trey. It was
Yeah.
very unusual, actually. But that's what we get when we go to these areas of high strangeness, and it's not just one place. We
No.
actually compare one of our spots. It's a different spot. We call it the Skinwalker Ranch of the South,
Yeah.
and it's at an undisclosed location because
Right.
it is so similar to the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, right?
It's crazy. And this is what I tell people is it is so uncanny. It's so outlandish that if I was to sit in front of you and tell you the story of our experiences, at this location, you would say I was full of, full of poo poo, and okay, we're after 9 p.m. We're full of crap. You would say I was full of crap. Uh, and
Got such a foul mouth.
yeah,
I'm
I
just
know,
kidding.
nasty man. But and when we started having all these experiences that were just so strange and crazy, I started kind of cataloging them. I'm like, whoa, this is starting to sound like a place I know of in Utah, in the Uinta Basin. And it had a lot of the same things as Skinwalker Ranch. We've had UFOs, like just recently, let's see, back in April, we had a really good UFO sighting, daytime sighting. Uh, disembodied voices, shadow people, luminescent orbs, cryptids, uh, things like that, just like Skinwalker Ranch. And now it's evolving uh, into much different experiences. And you got to experience some of that. We have an area adjacent to it. Our main area is called the Meadow, but there's other areas in this general region, and two of them. And I did not come up with these names. My team did, but they call one the Field of Dreams, and the other one the Field of Nightmares. So y'all came up with those names while y'all were researching those, and you actually were physically touched by, and we call that the infamous Bohonkus incident, where you were grabbed on your Bohonkus by some unseen force. So it's evolved into actually physically being touched. And Katie's friend, Katie Page, a well-known UFO researcher, she was there too, and she had one of her companions touched too that evening. So it's evolving. And now, most recently, let me get my, as like Memorial Day, just a few months ago, is now we're having dream speak. We're having actual downloads, while people are dreaming that correspond with things that are yet to come. So it's just really an odd, crazy place. You know, just off the hook, just absolutely off the hook. And people ask, well, how often do you research there? I'm planning another expedition in January, so I haven't told you that. You'll be getting the email, Jessica. But we're constantly investigating and researching this amazing area.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, our team loves to go out when it's about 20 degrees outside or less,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
120 degrees, right? So,
yeah,
it's either
yeah.
too hot or too cold.
It is. The temperature extremes are really crazy. It is. This area is so remote. There's no cell phone service. I mean, literally, you can't call anybody if you need help. Back one of our team members one time, and we had to drive him to the hospital ourselves because we couldn't get cell reception. So yeah, it's one
Yeah,
of those super remote areas.
it is. It is. It's very much like Skinwalker Ranch. Now Kristen's actually in the chat tonight.
Oh,
So
okay.
someone asked in the chat, who's Kristen? Kristen is one of our teammates. This is
Yeah,
Kristen, y'all. Kristen is actually the person who filmed the portal incident that we had out in the field, which
yeah,
is much like the Skinwalker Ranch activity that they have in Utah. We had something similar happen in the Meadow down here in the South. Now, in the South, somebody from across the pond asked, what state are we talking about now? We're talking about the areas of like Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Virginia, the southeastern part of the United States. Okay,
yeah.
so
It's
that's the area.
south of the Mason-Dixon line and east of Arizona. That's what I tell people. That's the specific location if you want to find it on a map. And I don't disclose the location because unfortunately, as soon as these locations become public, they really become inundated. I was talking with Dwayne Ollinger, who owns Blind Frog Ranch, back in April, and he's really having a problem with that. So we try to keep the location of this kind of on the down low.
Yeah,
And,
for research
and
purposes, y'all.
right, yeah. Oh, and if people think I'm a big old mean butt for doing that, well, that's fine too. But I do have my reasons.
Yes, we have our reasons because it gets attention. Much like a lot of these locations, when somebody goes public, film crews show up and like ghost adventures or ghost hunters or some kind of show will show up, and I want to film them there, much like like the Clown Motel, and I mean just a
Right.
lot of hot spots all over the country. So
Yeah.
um,
And what really kind of it drove that home, if you're talking about places that become famous, Yates Place, which is a famous campsite there in the Uwharrie National Forest, which has been on a lot of the Bigfoot shows. I was actually up there, Bigfoot researching, uh, and we got there, in the evening at Yates Place, set up our camp. Not a whole lot of people there. And when I woke up the next morning, there were literally lined like 50 campsites, cars down the road of people, people setting up. So when we went out and researched that evening, you would hear wood knocks and hollers and howls and see orbs, and you're like, okay, are those somebody else doing a wood knock in response to our wood knock? Is it somebody yelling, thinking we're a Bigfoot, or vice versa? And it just kind of became a clown show. It was just really, the quality research just was not happening because of the number of people. Now, when we go out to this site that we talked about in the ickiest, nastiest, coldest weather, and I'm talking like you're down in the teens and single digits sometimes, uh, we don't have a lot of people, because the weather's just so, just so rough. So, we try to limit it, and I think that our results speak for themselves. So, I'll stand on that.
they do. Okay. Well, I was doing some research on Skinwalker Ranch today, the Skinwalker Ranch, and because that is a place that people are very familiar with. They've heard about it. It's kind of the go-to when people are thinking about a place that is full of high strangeness that's been documented and studied by our government. Okay, of all people. Now, Trey, you have a government background. You just retired in military intelligence. Okay, and so, I feel like that totally gives even our team, we have other guys that are in the military on our team. It gives us, I don't want to say more credibility, but it does lend a little bit of credibility to all this research when we have people like you on the team. Because I'm not saying you had inside information or anything, but you have a thirst for knowledge, and you may know some things. I don't know.
Yeah, no. If I knew anything, I'd be wealthy now. No, I am one of the guys that from the worked in the intelligence community for all these years, and I can honestly say my job had absolutely nothing to do with UAPs, UFOs, nothing like that. It had nothing to do with that kind of stuff. Now we do know, and it has become public, that the government did have programs that we're investigating this, we're researching this, and an excellent book. If anybody wants to kind of peel back the veneer and see how special access research projects are run and funded, is an excellent book by Keller and Knapp called "Skinwalkers Inside the Pentagon," and it talks about the ATIP anomalies. Uh, I, my mind just is blanked out right now, but the ATIP program talks about how that was funded, how that was overlaid underneath the veneer of a special access program, and how the funding flowed into that, and the contract was let out to Bigelow Aerospace, which set up a sub unit called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, and they were the ones out there actually doing the research on the ground there at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, whenever Robert Bigelow was being interviewed about Skinwalker Ranch, people ask him specific questions, and he says, hey, are you going to release everything that the NIDS team found out there? And he says, I can't. And the reason he can't is he actually did that under a government contract. Any information that he discovered, data he gathered during that contract belongs to the government. They paid for it, and he signed a non-disclosure agreement. And some of that stuff may still be classified, so he's not at liberty to discuss it. But long story short, if there was nothing to this phenomenon, not just at Skinwalker Ranch, but elsewhere around the world, elsewhere here in the United States. If there wasn't anything to it, why would the government be spending so much money to research it? The government is very pragmatic. I mean, they're kind of goofy sometimes, and they do throw money away sometimes, but oftentimes they're very pragmatic. And they have a uh, very tight uh, agenda. They go looking for. When they fund these projects. So I think that lends some validity to the whole Skinwalker Ranch phenomenon.
It does. Okay, so I went digging today, and I went to the Skinwalker Ranch official website. And
Mhm.
so for anyone who's watching tonight or listening on podcast format, you guys, if y'all don't know what Skinwalker Ranch is, I'm going to give you a little dose of what the Skinwalker Ranch actually is. So it's recognized as the most science. This is from their website. It's recognized as the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet. Skinwalker Ranch is a 512-acre secure site that has been monitored for decades with armed security and surveillance 24/7, 365. This remote location was involved with a Pentagon funded black budget project studying UFO activity, cattle mutilations, and strange phenomenon, and is also known as a living laboratory for studying other intelligences and possible interdimensional phenomena. It is not open to the public and it does not allow tours. And something that I found super interesting is there was a quote on their website from Eric Bard. Okay, I guess he's part of the team out there,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
he and I spoke.
okay. So there's his quote is actually listed on their website. It says, "We are not here to believe. We are not here to disbelieve. We are here to observe." And my goodness, Trey, that sounds like our motto on our
which
team.
is which is really interesting because Eric and I talked about the meadow, and he has another friend, uh, James Keenan. Anybody that follows this kind of stuff is familiar with him. Eric and James have discussed the meadow, and I was specifically talking to Eric about our using radiation spikes as indicators of anomalous phenomena. So he seems to think Mr. Barr does it. That's a reasonable, way to go about it. So, we're on the right track, and all these, researchers are kind of thinking the same line. Thinking very similar about this stuff. So yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because those are folks, some of the folks I've talked to, and uh, we're all kind of reaching for the same goal.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really cool because what we do out there, like we go in with a skeptical mindset, to a lot of this stuff. We know that it's an area of high strangeness, but we don't know what we're going to get. So we're not out there just looking for Bigfoot. We're not out there just looking for UFOs. We're looking for whatever shows up,
Right.
basically. I think that's how it is with a lot of these hot spots all over the world. They're not just going to be Bigfoots there. If there's a Bigfoot sighting, there's probably going to be portals.
Mhm.
There's probably going to be ETs, and I mean, there's no telling what's out there. So
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that because I'm constantly thinking about this whole field. What is it we're looking at? And the more I think about it, and the more I ponder, uh, I think we're looking at the same phenomena, albeit from different perspectives. And I'll give you an example of that. And I'm going to kind of get theoretical here, so everybody just bear with me. Imagine a flat surface, two-dimensional, length and width. That's all you have, and you have beings that live in this flat world, flat Earth, you know, and all they know is length and width. They don't know the third dimension of height. And take the weirdest shaped object you can imagine, which for me, is like a French horn. That's a really weird shaped object. And this horn drops down into the second dimension from the third dimension, and you see the mouthpiece. So they say, "Oh wow, look at that! It's a round mouthpiece, a round thing." And then the horn rotates and sits up on the bell, and all they see is a hemispherical kind of line where that bell of the horn touches. They go, "Oh well, no, it's a line." So we got the line researchers saying, "Well, we're going to research lines," and then you got the circle researchers researching the mouthpiece. Then the thing rotates down, and you see the keys or the valves, which are a series of circles. And then you got the three circle people saying, "Well, we're going to be in the three circle camp." Well, all of them are looking at the same object, albeit different parts of it. And I have to wonder: are we looking at multidimensional beings, multidimensional entities, and multidimensional objects? And as they rotate down into our dimension, we're seeing different aspects of the same object. So the UFO people are seeing UFOs. Oh, those are UFOs. And the Bigfoot people are saying, "Oh, we're seeing Bigfoot." And the ghost people are saying, "Oh, we're seeing ghosts." or whatever, the telekinesis people, the psi people, or whatever, and perhaps they're all different parts of the same existence. Be it a entity, sentient entity, or an object, or something that's so bizarre and so strange we can't even conceptualize it.
That's right. And orbs, man,
Yeah,
orbs could be just about anything. I mean, that's
yeah,
kind of covering the spiritual,
yeah,
ghost, potentially ETs, and
yep,
I mean, I've had orbs shoot through the woods that I've seen, and then I heard like a Bigfoot growl in
yep.
huff. Okay, so they could be just about anything. So that's kind of, I think orbs are like the connecting factor of a lot of this paranormal stuff. But
Yeah,
that's my experience.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of commonality there. A lot of people that have seen, orbs, around UAP sightings or UAP, ET experiences, close encounters of the third kind, they've had orbs, or people have orbs in their house prior to abduction phenomena. Ghost people are like, oh, that's the spirit of dead Uncle Fred floating around. When it's just an orb. I mean, it's so there's, gosh, I mean, we've seen all kinds of orbs out at our sites. We've seen orbs. I've seen orbs down at the site you were at a few weekends ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a commonality about orbs or spheres of light, and a lot of people will say, a lot of those orbs are, dust mites that are, reflecting the flashback. And I'm absolutely right. If you go into a room, you take a shot with a camera, you're going to get a lot of reflection back. The test is the self luminant. Does it have its own luminescence? And if it does, and you can see it with the naked eye, then it's definitely an orb and probably something that involves high strangeness.
Yeah, lots of high strangeness. Oh my gosh. Now, okay, so when people are looking into areas of super high strangeness, a lot of times they're connecting ley lines,
Mhm.
and connecting those locations to ley lines. Now, I do have a couple of maps to show the audience tonight, because not to give our locations away, because I mean, but they may or may not sometimes fall on ley lines. Okay, and those are areas of it's like areas that are connected by like magnetic lines, right? Trey, do you know exactly what a ley line is?
Yeah, the ley lines are, it's a theory that you have places of interest on the earth that are connected by, you know, lines that are anomalies in the earth's magnetic field. And what people have found is if you take ancient sites that have ancient temples, cathedrals, uh, Neolithic, areas of, worship, that a lot of times these areas all are in a line or in a linear type configuration and are connected. So, there's a theory that there are certain energy lines, throughout the earth. What's interesting though is if you take David Paulides' missing 401 clusters, does that correspond with some of these ley lines? So that would be a really neat experiment to try to see if you see that.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting, because the different maps, as you overlay a map of the Bigfoot sightings with a map of the missing persons clusters, with a map of the deep underground military bases, with the map of the cave systems, they all can correlate in some way. And what I find really exciting and interesting are those stars, like down there. I think that's around the Bermuda Triangle down there, where all those ley lines are connecting right off the coast of Florida, not too far from where Coral Castle was built, which is an anomalous structure as well.
Mhm.
Um, lots of high strangeness. Those, all the ley lines kind of combine right there, and then out in the southwest as well. There's an intersection of ley lines, which I find really interesting. Um, but yeah, I actually have a friend named Tracy. Tracy's traveling around all over the South right now. She did it a couple of months ago actually, but she was going from Indian burial mound to Indian burial mound all over the place, and mapping out ley lines and stuff. So, but they were the Indian burial mounds were connected by ley lines, of all things.
Yeah, and the ley line thing really kind of started in Europe because they were looking at Neolithic sites like Stonehenge, which if you ever get a chance to go to Stonehenge, definitely do it. It's really cool. In cathedral sites and places like that. But here in the United States, our First Nations and Native Americans have a lot of a lot of effigies and spiritual locations that have been lost, that have either been bulldozed down, grown over, things like that. Not so different than Central America, where there are still pyramids and Mayan, Incan, and Aztec, Olmec, structures under hills. So there's still a lot of stuff here in the United States where as you start continuing to explore along these ley lines, there's probably countless structures, Native American structures along these. So yeah, your
Oh
friend
yeah.
is definitely she's going about it the right way. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and we also we have Mayan ruins here in Georgia where I live, and up in North Georgia, they say. So I think history is not exactly what we've been taught in some aspects. So I find that interesting. Now, something else that another area of high strangeness would be the entire range of the Appalachian Mountains.
Mm,
And I think that there's so much that comes out of those mountains, Trey. I mean, we do some of our research in those mountains.
mhm,
And so from the ghosts, I know you've had ghost sightings. I
mhm.
remember you
Oh yeah.
talking about a woman holding a lantern in the middle of the night walking down a trail. But
Yeah.
we have, I mean, even modern day dinosaur sightings, like velociraptors have been spotted in Georgia, they say. Um, Dogman, werewolf, lots of Bigfoot sightings. So that's a really interesting area of high strangeness, all up that mountain range.
Yeah, what's really kind of cool about that, and our friend Josh Cutchin, just wrote a really good book about Appalachian. It's a novel about Appalachian folklore called "Them Old Ways Never Die." Is people that, especially of Scots Irish descent, which my family is Scots Irish, is we have a very rich culture. Going back to the Celtic nations of the Wee people. Willow of the Wisp, all of this very rich culture of the Fae and things like that. And so you bring these over to an area in the Appalachians, which are ancient. The Appalachians are so old that these phenomena, these creatures are already here. So we take a folkloric overlay, lay it onto the Appalachians, and that's continued on through our oral tradition and our written tradition, and people that research this and look into this and continue this, this very rich history, this cultural history, and bring it forward into the 21st century.
Oh yeah. Well, and speaking of mountain ranges, I mean, I always hear about Mount Shasta and Mount Adams. Okay, out on the other side of the country, over on the West Coast. I mean, those are areas of extremely high strangeness, from stargates to
Mhm.
holographic mountains to portals to Sasquatch sightings. You name it. Orbs, it's out there. Even entrances to inner Earth. Okay, and I got to say, Trey, I did a show, and I had been tasked with a remote viewing target of the giant sighting over
Mhm.
in Oregon recently. Okay, that guy had documented, and so lots of high strangeness over there, but there a lot of it has to do with mountains and mountain
Mhm.
ranges.
Yeah, the mountains, and you mentioned something that just popped into my mind. There was an amazing experience. Now, this wasn't quite as far west as you're talking about. This was in, I believe, Wyoming, in Oxbow National Forest, if I'm not mistaken. It's the famous Higdon sighting, UFO sighting. And what's really, really neat about that is when Mr. Higdon was out hunting, he encountered, and wait for it, a cube in the forest. And out of this cube came a being that invited him back onto it. And it turns out this cube was a ship. And David Paulides did a documentary called Missing 101, the UFO Connection, and did a representation of that cube, and it was a barely translucent cube in the forest, kind of reflecting the outside, just barely visible. Now, where have we seen something similar to that?
It's a meadow. It's a
Yeah,
meadow. And Kristen, who's in the chat, is actually the one who videoed that. And we sent you guys, they sent, let's just say they, Kristen and two fellas sent two people into the cube.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's for those of you that haven't heard the story before. Is we encountered, detected, uh, after we recorded and found several heat signatures that did not correspond to our team members. We saw two entities on our thermals that didn't correspond with any of our known team members. We did a assessment to see where everybody was, and one of our thermal operators started to see a cube or a box form. A box. Like, but it was only detectable through thermal, and it was colder than the surroundings. And we vectored some of our team members into the remnants of this cube as it started to dissipate. And when they went into it, where this area was, they went in unencumbered. They walked in, they weren't tripping over anything. They just walked into it. They said it was colder. It was very, very dark, like a black velvet curtain had been dropped on them, like a drapery. And they were in there for just a little, very short period of time, maybe not more than 90 seconds, and they backed out. Now, the weird thing is when they backed out, now they were encountering brambles and branches and sticker bushes and briars and all of this stuff that wasn't there when they went in. So the reality had shifted just a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Or they walked into the remnants of a multidimensional craft in the shape of a cube that had formed, and they walked into the remnants of its existence. And then when they backed out, they were just back in the normal environment. So yeah, that's probably if we got it on video. Yeah, how about that?
Yes.
So that's kind of talking about boxes and cubes. People probably get tired of me talking about boxes and cubes, but there's a history of boxes and cubes going all the way back. Probably way back, but we certainly start seeing it in the Middle Ages when they talk about boxes and cubes being the prima materia in alchemy, which was the basis of all life and understanding. So now we bring it, to the 21st century, 20th century with the Higdon event, and then 21st century with our stuff with boxes and cubes once again.
Wow. Yeah, I'm hearing more and more about cubes now that our team, and our team wasn't public about that for a while. I mean, that happened several years ago. And and it was only about 3 years ago that was made public at all.
Right.
About that. And soon after, we started seeing movies like Missing 411, the David Paulides movie with about the UFOs. And there was a cube in there, and I started seeing cubes and hearing about cubes a lot more often. So interesting stuff. Now, we do have, I wanted to bring up another place that's really cool because I feel like there are vortexes. Okay. When I was up in North Carolina, I was hanging out with some elders of the Cherokee tribe, and they took me to the top of this mountain where we watched the sky ships over Cachers. If you guys are familiar with that, please look that up. It is so cool. We had UFOs flying over our heads the entire weekend that I was up there. And Chief David was calling them in with his crystal wand and stuff. It was wild. It was so cool. But we were up there, and there was a place on top of that mountain where it was a sacred mountain, and it was what he called a vortex. And you'd stand right on the spot, and it felt like the entire world was spinning all around us. Okay, when we go up there. Now, there's a place in Montana. It's called the Montana Vortex. And this is a place I've heard about before, but I don't know a ton about it. But they say there are 3 vortexes on this property, and I feel like this is just an area of super high strangeness. Let's see. I think I have a picture. They put a mystery house on this property, and it's all crooked. And you go inside, you feel completely off kilter when you go there. So by definition, a vortex is a gravitational anomaly that bends the rules of gravity and human perspective. As soon as you approach the space, you'll start to feel the pull. This is located on the outskirts of Columbia Falls in Montana, and it's near the Glacier National Park. The Montana Energy Vortex. The best way to see it and to feel it is to go inside the House of Mystery. It's a crooked shack that sits in the center of the most dynamic vortex. Now, Native Americans were the first to discover it, but in 1970, that mystery house was made, and now people can experience it for themselves.
I was all
Were you crooked?
Yeah, I was.
You're leaning. You were leaning. You got off kilter because we got pulled into the vortex on this one.
We did.
Yeah,
But,
I just think it's interesting. It said that most
right,
people that go there feel nauseated and they get
right.
sick.
But yeah, that's that's really important because we've been highly disoriented. I've been incredibly disoriented, at some of these places. Uh, and what's interesting is if you take in, like I said, we focus on the experience and the empirical experience and the empirical data. Is you have this experience, but take something that you can start capturing stuff empirically with. Is radiation, tied into it? We've seen radiation spikes, whenever we've had some of these incidences of high disorientation. Uh, a EMF meter, a tri-field meter, are there fluctuations in electromagnetic fields? And last but not least, geomagnetic fluctuation. Does a compass function in these areas? And what people find is either all three of these phenomenologies or one of them are present in some of these places that are locations of high strangeness. And human beings are electrical creatures. We're electrical machines, and I don't mean to diminish the inherent uh, nature of humanity, but we are biological machines. And because of that, there are certain things that can cause machines to go out of kilter. One of them is high magnetic fields. Another one is radiation can cause changes, and electromagnetic fluctuations can cause people to become off kilter. So any of these things can be indicative of an area of high strangeness. And like you said, they are all over the world. There's a very famous site in Romania. There's a famous site in Japan. There's famous sites here in the United States. So they're very common, much more common than people think.
Ooh, you mentioned Japan. Okay, so there's actually a forest in Japan, and I wasn't sure I was going to bring this up tonight because it's kind of dark.
Mm.
But let's talk about it. Okay, there's a forest, and I believe you might know the name of it, Trey. But it's where people go to unalive themselves. Okay, I have to be careful what I say on YouTube. Where they go to unalive themselves, and it's
Right,
like it's a magnet for that, and they
right.
have so many people that go and pass away there by taking their own lives
It is.
yearly.
It's called the Akio Forest. It's on the slopes of Mount Fuji, and uh, yes, people do go there in numbers to, as the poet put it, to shed their earthly coils. And we've got to be careful what we say on YouTube. But they go to move on, and it's not just one or two. I mean, it's not like you know, they find one or two individuals. Is they actually have patrols that go in there at the end of the day into this forest, sweep it to detect anybody that has decided to stay there in perpetuity. Uh, and there's something very dark about it. Something very. I'm not going to say the word sinister because the stuff I've read about it, I don't get the fact that it's sinister, but it's one of those places that has a feel that it's right on the edge of whatever's next. That's where somebody would go to transition. That's a natural place for that to happen. And you can go and look up videos of this, and you'll find threads where people will tie a thread when they leave the trail. Uh, and I see somebody just mentioned the forest in Romania. Actually, I was going to talk about that next. They'll tie threads when they leave the trail, and when they decide to take care of what they're going to do, is that so their loved ones can find them, you know, when they come looking for them. So they'll go, and these patrols will go out through the trails, and they'll follow these threads and police up, what's left out there. So it's something very compelling about that place. People feel drawn to it, in their moment of sadness and despair. So, and you know, people have researched this and tried to figure out what it is about this place. Is it mass hysteria? Is it an overload of folklore, or is it something much more primal? Something more that connects with us on a very human, very basic level that people think that's where they need to go to perform this this act. So yeah, that's a very interesting place. If you research this, I will warn you, you need to be prepared for what you're going to see and read about. But go into it with an open mind that it is, if you look at it as a place of transition, maybe some of the negativity of it can be stripped away and you can look at it from a much, much different perspective.
Oh yeah, it's not pretty, but I've got actually I researched this today. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of go over some information about this forest real quick because it has a lot of anomalies like compasses. If you take a compass into that place, like the magnetics of that place make a compass spin, and so they behave strangely. Some of the bodies are never found, which I found kind of odd. It sits on a lava field.
Hmm.
The forest, okay, they do annual searches for bodies, and the forest workers are kind of tasked with finding the bodies there. But people go and try to frequently camp in that area. Now, I can only imagine that it's not for anything good. Okay, and I would think that like the battlefields here and some of the places that we go to with the high strangeness that's kind of dark, there's
Hmm.
blood rituals going on there, and there's rituals like Satanism and stuff go on in places like that, which just make it a little bit more crazy out there. Okay, as far as the energies go. But the forest contains a naturally frozen cave. Okay, of all things, a frozen cave, which I found odd. But it's full of butterflies. Like there's so many butterflies in this place, which is interesting too. So, but it sits at the base of Mount Fuji, Trey. So I would
Hmm.
say that that's just another anomalous mountain right there, I
Hmm.
guess.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's something is different about that place, and I think people are drawn to it. They might not be able to even articulate why they're drawn to it, but nevertheless, they are.
Yeah. I mean, who knows why, but there's something that's drawing people there. It's got to be energetic, some sort of frequency. I mean, maybe it's just it feels very peaceful or something, but I don't know. I just don't know. It's who knows why we're drawn to the places we're drawn to, you know. Um
And some of these places have a very tragic history, like the area where we research. There's been gobs of bodies found out there. And there's you know murders, and people go out there and they just die. And there was a horrible murder there just last year. So these areas. I think they draw all kinds of people. Some for very peaceful, positive experiences like us, and then other people for some questionable stuff, and then absolutely some people that are there for nefarious purposes.
yeah. Yes, there's and it's could be very cultural as well, as Sapphire Elf is saying.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's all about different cultures, and I think it has a lot to do with energies, the frequencies, the vibration. Now I have seen, before we go tonight, Trey, I've seen
Oh,
I guess TCR 44 has asked me twice, because I started the question, what are your thoughts on Dogman, Trey?
thoughts on Dogman? Hmm, I think there are bipedal creatures that have a long snout akin to canines. What's interesting about that is you look at the instances of lycanthropes, wolfmen, werewolves, in Europe, and you bring it all the way forward. Uh, is why is that important? Why are wolves important? Two reasons. I think either A is that there is a creature like that, or number two, one thing that uh, my mind just once again went blank. It's a little late for me. Brad Steiger talks about, forgive me, and John Keel is thought forms. Is that we will project our thought forms into instances of high strangeness. Now, wolves, there's a cultural fear of wolves that goes all the way back to the Middle Ages and brings it forward. So, wolves are something that we're frightened of and that we find very mysterious, very, very, very wise. There's a lot of, wolf lore, in various cultures. Also, I think that as these things wink in and out of existence, they take on different forms. And I think the dog man, wolf man, werewolf form is one of them. And I think it's just probably one of a whole bunch of different hominid, human type creatures that are out there that walk on two legs. There's tons of accounts of things. I was just doing some research on Marley Woods in Missouri of something, walking on four legs and then standing up and going across a road, with a wolf-like snout and all of that. So yes, they're definitely out there. Thankfully, I haven't encountered one, but that's not to say I won't run into one walking from my cottage back to my house tonight.
I was going to say, not yet. Not yet. We haven't seen any yet. Not where we go. Not at the meadow. But there are reports in those areas. So who's to say we won't one day? Yeah. I don't know. I'm not looking for. I mean, actually, I do want to see a Dogman as long as it's from a distance. I would love that. Totally. Okay, Trey. Man, we've come to the end of the hour. This has gone by so fast. I have a list of other places we could have talked about too, and I know you know a bunch of places. So maybe you'll come back and join me again one night, and we can talk about this again.
All you have to do is give me a call. I'm happy to be here.
Well, shoot, yeah. Well, Trey, where can everybody find you? I know you you have a brand new website for people to get in touch with you and to see your research. Tell us about it.
I just launched my website this weekend. It's TreyHudsonResearch.com. Yep, there it is. And the cool thing about that is I list media appearances. I'm coming up next Thursday. I'm going to be on Raised by Giant on a roundtable discussion with famous David Morehouse and some other people. So that's coming up, and I've got some stuff coming up in December. You can also go to Trey Hudson-author on Facebook. I'm also there. Find the Meadow Project on Amazon.com. Just type in my name, Trey Hudson. Explorations in the South Skinwalker Ranch. So I'm a busy guy. For being retired, I'm hardly sitting at home on my keister.
Oh yeah, no, you don't slow down at all, and we do spend a lot of time out in those woods, doing a lot of fun research. So I know I'm going to see you out in the woods here pretty soon, probably in the next month or two, right?
Sure. So absolutely.
Perfect. Well, Trey, thank you so much for being here tonight. This has been another fantastic show with you, with a lot of great information. I think that I learned some stuff tonight, and I think our audience did too. So thank you for being here, Trey. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, see you, Trey. Thank you. Okay, you guys, what a fantastic show. Oh my gosh, I love having my teammates on because we just flow, man. I tell you what, we flow. So thank you to everybody who was in the chat tonight, moderators, all the guests tonight. You guys had some great questions and some wonderful comments. I guess I will see you guys back here tomorrow night. You guys come hang out with me, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 Central, here at Spaced Out Radio. You guys have a great night. Again, thanks for being here. Oh, by the way, don't forget after hours after this show. It's actually not a live show tonight, but they're going to be running a rerun of something really fantastic. I think it's Lou Elizondo. Okay, so you guys check that out, and I will see you back here tomorrow night. Y'all have a great night.